cessation of one, the beginning of another. Hopeful prospects stand in the shadow of opportunity. Massive candidates commence on an uncharted path. Today, these college heroes peer into the future, seeking glory, reminded of greatness. It's a beautiful day for a ball game because that's just about what we have inside the theater at Madison Square Garden. It's the 61st annual NFL Draft, and the Jet fans are here in force. They're first on the clock. They've been there since about Christmas. I think some of these guys have been here since Christmas. And this name, Keyshawn Johnson, has been at or near the top of the charts since about Christmas as well. Will it be Keyshawn Johnson, who the Jets draft #1, the wide receiver from USC? We've assembled everybody, and that means yours truly, Chris Berman, Joe Theismann, Mel Kiper. Welcome to Madness in late April. We are everywhere again as our draft coverage continues here on ESPN. 17th year we have done this, and as you've grown to expect here on ESPN's draft coverage, we're inside many of the war rooms, including that one of the Super Bowl champion Dallas Cowboys. You've seen Jerry Jones and company, and of course they're hearing it here live in New York. Jerry Jones and company, 3 of the last 4 years they've been Super Bowl champs. Here's where it begins. The man that helped the Cowboys win 2 of those 3 Super Bowl championships, Jimmy Johnson, is now in Miami. We'll have War Room Cam inside Miami to take a look at what the Dolphins will do when you're under Jimmy Johnson. There are new coaches in the NFL this year, and one of them is Vince Tobin. Arizona has the 3rd overall pick. We'll look inside the Cardinals' War Room. Tony Dungy is the new head man at Tampa Bay. The Bucs will be very busy early. 2 firsts, 2 seconds, 4 picks in all inside the first 41. We also have reporters everywhere, but the question is, for the New York Jets, etc., will it be Keyshawn Johnson, the name that we will hear within 5 or 10 minutes? Reporters all throughout the NFL, is Keyshawn the man? We certainly think he is. For the New York Jets, we think it's all systems go. For the latest, let's go to Mark Malone at Weeb Eubank Hall at Jets headquarters. Mark.
Well, Chris, as you said, the Jets still hold on to the #1 pick. They have been in serious negotiations with Keyshawn's representatives since late last night. If they can't get the deal done, by the time they go off the clock, they'll either trade the pick or make another selection. Now let's go to Gary Danielson.
Vince Tobin sitting in a pretty good seat. He gets the 3rd pick. That's an impact player, of course, and it wasn't his fault. The other story impacting on this draft, Eric Swan deal does not appear to go through. He'll be playing here with the Cardinals. Let's now go to Sal Palantonio.
I'm at Raven headquarters in Baltimore. I just talked to Art Modell a few minutes ago. They have the #4 pick and are happy to sit there. He said they're 99% sure they won't move from that pick despite last-minute offers. They like Lawrence Phillips and hope he drops in his lap. Let's go to Hank Goldberg.
I'm in St. Louis with the Rams, who are holding picks number 6 and 13, so the phones have been active. Latest rumor, they move up to Jacksonville, give up their 13, and we're moving up along with Todd Light so they can take Lawrence Phillips. But they may not take a running back with number 6 if they don't get Phillips early. Let's go to Tommy Jackson.
Here in Carolina, where the Panthers have the 8th pick in the draft, the emphasis will be on offense. Last year, they had an outstanding defense that allowed them, as an expansion team, to win 7 games. This year, they'll look to help their young quarterback, Kerry Collins, by drafting skill positions on the offensive side of the ball. Let's go to Andrea Kramer.
Here in Tampa, the Tony Dungy era kicks off with the Bucs holding 2 first-round picks, 12 and 22, and 4 of the first 41 selections. The former defensive coordinator is looking at, naturally, defense, with needs on the line and in the secondary. Now let's go to Chris Mortensen.
I'm in Miami, where Jimmy Johnson's first draft as Dolphins coach is widely anticipated. Jimmy has the 20th pick, but he's been working the phones. Will he do a deal? Will he do a deal with the Cowboys and Jerry Jones? Speaking of the Cowboys, let's go to Chris Myers.
Here in Dallas, the Cowboys have the last pick of the opening round. They'll choose 30th. Don't expect him to stay there. In the 7 years that Jerry Jones has owned the team, he's either traded up or out of the first round every time except once. That's when Dallas picked Troy Aikman. Don't expect an Aikman pick this time. Let's go to Chris Fowler.
Thank you, Chris. Here in our ESPN studios, we'll get the inside of a couple of Mikes. Mike Lombardi, the former and the final director of player personnel in the history of the Cleveland Browns, will take us inside the war room, tell us how teams are built from an insider's perspective. And Mike Gottfried, a college coach for 15 years, and of course our ESPN primetime college analyst. He'll break down tape and look at the careers of the guys we have watched develop in college football in the past couple of years. Joining us here in the studio, part of a very good draft for receivers back in 1988, our own Sterling Sharp.
And Chris, this draft is exactly like that one in 1988. These guys are big hitters. They believe in yards after the catch. They're not as fast as a lot of people would like, but these guys love to take the ball to the house after the short game. Chris, back to you in New York.
All right, Sterling, thank you. And Sterling knows what it is to be a wide receiver picked in the first round of what a year that was in '88. Sterling Sharp, Michael Irvin. There's been a lot of chanting for the most scrutinized player in college football, certainly since the Fiesta Bowl, and that's Nebraska running back Lawrence Phillips. As you well know, he did not play the first 6 games of the Huskers season this year because he pleaded no contest to domestic assault and a trespassing charge on campus situation. Since then, he has decided not to talk to the media late. He has been invited by the NFL, but then advised not to be among the 11 ball players who we think will be drafted very early in the first round and be here. He will, though, immediately fly to the team that drafts him and attend a press conference, depending on where it is, as he's on the West Coast now, whether it's today or tomorrow. And after that, he will speak with us here at ESPN. So where Lawrence Phillips goes, who picks him, who makes a trade to get him, and is he still in the Jets situation? All these questions to be answered. But let's head to the podium and the commissioner, Paul Tagliabue.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the National Football League's 61st annual college player selection draft. The New York Jets have the first selection and are now on the board.
Well, you might as well be at Giant Stadium. It's not that far from here. The Jets and the Giants picking 1 and 5. The Jets and the Giants have not been in the first 5, both of the teams since 1981. We'll have plenty of raucous developments. As we told you in our beginning, we expected to be Keyshawn, and the card is going up. We're going to keep it right here as the card is on the way, I am told. Well, let's kick it to you, Mel. Wide receiver, running backs, defensive ends, no quarterbacks. That's what we're going to see, though, in the first round.
Tremendously deep draft for wide receivers, Chris. I think Keyshawn Johnson is special, though, because he's 6'3 and a quarter, 220 pounds, and he wants to be a Jet. He wants to be a difference maker.
All right, well, here it is.
Wide receiver, Southern California.
And the Jets have just won the Super Bowl. He's on the phone. He's talking with the Jets, and they did the right thing. There's no question. He's a game breaker. And the Jet fans are raucous. Keyshawn Johnson, Mel. No question for the Jets. Would you make the pick like this?
Definitely, Chris. When you get a player that's that big and that athletic and has an attitude about him, which is what the Jets need. They need an infusion of confidence, a winning mentality. Keyshawn Johnson feels he is that kind of player to catapult the Jets into a playoff position. You watch him play, big, strong, physical player. Does a great job against these small 5'9", 5'10" quarterbacks that you see around the National Football League. He was a dominant college receiver. You see his body control, and then the way he shields a defender away from the football. People say he doesn't run the 4-4, but in the open field, he'll outrace defensive backs to pay dirt. So like a Jerry Rice, he's a big play guy without sprinter speed. He ran a lot of inside routes at USC, which means he has the toughness to catch in traffic. In my opinion, he's a multi-dimensional player, ideally suited for Ron Erhardt's offense.
Do you think it's a perfect fit, Joe?
Absolutely, no question. I think one of the things also that was brought out that is very important to understand about Keyshawn Johnson is he runs as fast in pads as he does without pads, and that was very important when everybody analyzed him. But you take a look at what the Jets want to do on offense. They bring in Jumbo Elliott and Dave Williams as tackles. They bring in Neil O'Donnell as a quarterback. They bring in Ron Earhart as their coordinator. Richie Kotite likes the spread set, as does Ron Earhart. They needed a receiver. All they had was Jeff Graham, and you can see that the Jet fans agree with this pick going away. They had to make it, or else anybody could have left this building alive, I don't think, Boone.
Well, he's been around football his whole life. Keyshawn Johnson was a ball boy at USC when Ronnie Lott and Marcus Allen played there. Jeff Fisher played there, the current coach of the Oilers. He's a man that New York will love with his personality. In junior college at West LA Community College, he returned a kickoff right through the end zone into the stands, went up to a concessionaire, grabbed into a bucket of ice, and had himself a soda during the game. I don't know that he could do that at the Meadowlands, but he's certainly going to try. Sterling Sharp, Keyshawn Johnson, #1 pick. Would you have made the move?
I think I would have made the move because in the age of the big receiver, he is the biggest. And he may not be the best receiver in this year's draft, by the way. Marvin Harrison is a guy with great speed, great intensity. He sees the field before the catch, so he knows how to make those yards after the catch. I think the one thing that the Jets get is they get a guy that loves to play the game of football, a guy with a lot of enthusiasm, a guy with a lot of ability. But you look at, I would have made the pick for Lawrence Phillips. In Ron Earhart's system, the one thing he likes to do is run the football. Lawrence Phillips is a dominating running back, and because of all the outfield problems, I think the Jets went with the safe pick and Keyshawn Johnson. I'm not disagreeing with that pick, but in the age of Ron Earhart's system, where he really doesn't like to throw the football a great deal, I think Lawrence Phillips might have been the choice right here. Chris, back to you.
All right, Sterling, you know the excitement that Keyshawn is feeling right now. Last year, Mel, we had 3 receivers go in the first 10. Westbrook to the Redskins, Joey Galloway, who made such a big hit with Seattle. And then, of course, J.J. Stokes of the 49ers, that didn't really make a hit. How does he rank with those 3 guys?
I think he's the #1 guy, Chris. When I look at Keyshawn Johnson, I like the consistency from week to week. It didn't matter if he was double covered. It didn't matter if he was the target of a defense. He was still out there getting 10, 11, 12 catches. And I think that's what's special about Keyshawn Johnson. Plus the fact, and the most important fact is he's not 5'11". He's 6'3¼ Joe, and I think that's critical when you talk about a Herman Moore type receiver in the NFL.
Mel, the thing about him is he is a young man who is a difference maker. I compare him tremendously to Michael Irvin. He has the charisma. He has the ability to go out and make plays. He will be a go-to guy. And one other thing, if you go into a 4-receiver set with the Jets, which I anticipate they'll do quite a bit this year, he doesn't have to worry about bump and runs. He'll be able to use his great athletic ability that we saw in college right away at the professional level, something Michael Westbrook wasn't able to do as a Redskin last year. Took him a little while to get going. It's not going to take Keyshawn very long to get going.
The 1996 NFL Draft is brought to you by Jaguar Cars. For more information about the new 1996 Jaguars, call 1-800-4-JAGUAR. And by Radio Shack. You've got questions, we've got answers.
And welcome back to the NFL Draft. This concludes our coverage of the NFL Draft. You've seen the Jets draft Keyshawn Johnson. What more do you need? You already feel like you're at kickoff the opening weekend in September. Well, now comes the suspense. Now comes the pick where Jacksonville might pick running back Lawrence Phillips in Nebraska. Several teams may trade up into that spot, or we might see Lawrence Phillips hang for 5 or 6 or 7 picks. And what normally would be a sure thing, Phillips comes with some different equipment. We mentioned before a 6-game suspension at the beginning of this year for Nebraska after pleading no contest to misdemeanor assault charges. He had 3 other scraps on campus in Nebraska, missed a game in '93 because of fighting, not on field now, but off-field fighting. In March '95, he had a street altercation. In June '95, disturbing the peace. Now, we mention that because those are the facts, but the difference is Lawrence Phillips does not come with baggage of players like you would have heard last year, perhaps. Baggage of questions. You talk to any NFL team, what they think could be a question of how he's accepted in his community. There is not a question of Lawrence Phillips as to any drug questions, as to a young man that has a chip on his shoulder. Those character questions have been answered 100% yes by all the National Football League teams that we have spoken to. Are these incidents or these problems? And these are what the teams have to weigh at this point. Let's go to Chris Mortensen, who's at Miami headquarters. Mort, what have you heard around the league? What's the inside word on Lawrence Phillips? Who's scared of it? Who doesn't view it as a problem at all?
Well, I think most teams are very cautious, kind of buyer beware, Chris. The Jacksonville Jaguars have been very careful here. When they realized that the Jets are definitely taking Keyshawn Johnson, they knew they were staring at the possibility of Lawrence Phillips, the top-rated player on their board, falling to them. They picked a first-round back last year in James Stewart. They picked up Natron Means on the waiver wires. So David Selden, their team president, made the long trip cross-country Thursday night, met with Phillips Friday and said, look, we want to go over everything with you, and basically said, hey, if we pick you, we want you to finish college, get your degree. We want you to contribute $100,000 to a women's shelter. We want you to work in the community. We want you to follow up on your therapy for anger or whatever problem you have. So they're being very careful here how Jacksonville proceeds. They're also talking to other teams about possibly trading the pick. We mentioned the
conditions that Jacksonville has is that they want to develop a mentoring program for Phillips in Jacksonville.
Also been working a trade. We'll see if that happened, or we'll see if it's Simeon Rice, Kevin Hardy, or Lawrence Phillips. Let's go to the podium.
With the second pick in the first round, the Jacksonville Jaguars select Kevin Hardy, linebacker, Illinois. Arizona is now on the clock.
Well, this is very interesting because the signals that we had gotten from Jacksonville, Mel and Joe, was that for some reason they had had Simeon Rice maybe ahead of Kevin Hardy, but Hardy is a guy that can play every down. I mean, Jacksonville can use everything, and there's no question what a force he can be on defense.
I think it's a great choice. I've been a big Kevin Hardy supporter for a couple of years now. I got to know Kevin last year. He's a great kid, a hard worker, a multi-dimensional football player. You know, we had heard a lot of speculation the last month that Jacksonville had cooled down on Hardy. They were going to go a different direction. Then this morning, he started to resurface it. They wanted value with this pick. They didn't want to give the choice away. They felt that Kevin Hardy was too good a player in the end to pass up, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. I think he's going to be a great addition to the Jacksonville Jaguar football team that certainly needed defensive help. If you look at Kevin Hardy, I talk about a multi-dimensional linebacker. That means he's got the size, he has the athletic ability, the strength to be strong at the point, and the ability to cover. You watch him here. This is against Arizona. The ability he has to play through trash and make the open field tackle. He also this year developed into a much better attacker off the corner, complementing Simeon Rice very well. That's the ability, I think, to put him over the top. You see him off the corner again in a down position, which means you can move him around. A creative coordinator can get a lot of use out of a Kevin Hardy. You can also keep him on the field every down. No situational substitution. Here he is against a good-looking tight end, Scott Slutzker from Iowa, getting out there, making the catch. Very athletic play by a linebacker. I think this is a special football player. It's in that Greg Lloyd area where you can keep him on the field. He can do everything a defensive coordinator wants a linebacker to do.
No, I don't disagree with your analysis of it. I don't disagree with the fact that it is a good pick. I don't know if this actually addresses some of the needs of Jacksonville, though. They only had 5 plays over 30 yards last year, so offensively they certainly could use a game breaker. Defensively, they only had 17 sacks. Kevin Hardy is not necessarily going to be a guy who's going to go out and get sacks for you. It's a good football player. It is value, but does it address some of the needs of that football team? That's the only question I would have.
Pretty interesting company because since 1980, only 4 linebackers have gone with pick number 1, number 2. Quentin Coriat in 92 with the Colts. Cornelius Bennett, who's turned out to be a pretty darn good player when he was selected in 1987. Johnny Cooks by the Colts. Again, this is a team that always does it, no matter what city they're in. Johnny Cooks in 82, and some guy in New York named Lawrence Taylor was the number 2 pick overall in 81. Well, so Jacksonville does not go for Lawrence Phillips. I don't think we're really surprised, but now we start to wonder where he'll go. Does Arizona look at him? Does somebody come up to make the pick to number 3 with Arizona for Lawrence Phillips? Let's get to Andrea Kramer's thoughts on all this. Andrea?
Well, Chris, I spoke to Tom Coughlin this morning, and he was clearly struggling with the decision. A couple of questions he had to ask himself that they were going to be discussing all morning were, was this a one-time incident? And also, Phillips' probation ends November 29th of this year.
Thank you. We talking about Kevin Hardy and projecting him as perhaps being a Pro Bowl linebacker. Certainly that's what Jacksonville hopes. We got a Pro Bowl linebacker of our own. Our good friend and compatriot Tom Jackson, who's at the Carolina headquarters. You looked at Hardy plenty on film, Tommy. Tell me about how well you think he will play and how soon he'll play well in the NFL. Yeah. First annual selection meeting. If you look it up in the dictionary, it's called the NFL Draft, and we have 2 picks gone. First time we've had a couple of seniors go in about 4 or 5 years, actually, with the first 2 picks with Keyshawn Johnson, Jets, Kevin Hardy, Jacksonville. Tom was just actually warming up the throat before. Now I want to go back to Carolina and Tommy, Kevin Hardy, you think he can be an impact player right away with this expansion team, Jacksonville?
Just kidding, Chris. Yeah, I think that he can have impact right away. I think that what put a premium on this pick and made him the second pick in the draft is the fact that he's a do-everything outside linebacker. He's able to play the run. He's able to shorten the corner on his pass rush. He's good in man-to-man coverage, and he moves good in space with the zone. And then I think he also will present an intangible for his coach. He is the most coachable player that any coach will run into in this league this year.
Coachable. There's a term, Tommy, that will appeal to any head coach in the National Football League. Well, Arizona's now on the clock. They have about 7.5 minutes to go. All signs point to the massive tackle, 318 pounds, 6'8", Jonathan Ogden from UCLA, kind of the local player, a Pac-10 player. They were shopping Eric Swan, defensive tackle, this week. Last night, it looks like all those deals fell apart. Now, will they get calls for the pick? Let's get the latest from Arizona and head out to Gary Danielson. Gary.
Well, Chris, it's really the opposite down here in Arizona. As they stay on the clock, Vince Tobin told me yesterday that he's going to use all the time. He has not made a decision. He would not rule out Lawrence Phillips. Garrison Hurst has not yet signed, but they have not yet had a lot of activity. As we look into the war room camera, you'll see that Vince Tobin on the right is sitting there. His back is to us, trying to make a decision. This is going to be his first major decision as a head coach, and he's going to have it. Jonathan Ogden is a guy. Remember, this is a team, the Arizona Cardinals, that finished last in points scored and last in points allowed. I think either way they go, offense or defense, are going to get impact player. But remember this, talking to the people around here, they felt there were 6 impact players in this draft. I would not rule out a trade down if someone really wants Lawrence Phillips. Let's now go to Baltimore and South Palantonio.
Gary, I just checked in with the Baltimore War Room. They said Arizona did, in fact, call them on the telephone and ask if they were interested in trading in flip-flopping the number 3 and the number 4 picks. And Art Modell said flatly, no way, we're standing pat at number 4. The rumor out of their headquarters is that Arizona has written Phillips' name down on a card and could be prepared to take him. They're at decision time right now. Let's go back to Chris Berman in New York.
All right, Sal, thank you. We do know that even last night, really that's an owner decision. And Mr. Bill Bidwell had kept pretty much his thoughts on would they take Lawrence Phillips to himself until the last night or two in the draft. So maybe even as late as this morning, Mel, Arizona brass were right under the owner, Mr. Bidwell. Found out, gee, are we allowed to look at him or not? Let's go to your draft board and look at those impact players they were talking about.
And certainly the top 2 win. And Jonathan Ogden is a player that would be a great fit for Arizona. He can play right tackle, Boomer's blind side, have help from the tight end. Of course, you have Lomas Brown, the veteran, on the left side. Lawrence Phillips is a major risk early in the draft. I think that would be a very questionable choice for a team. We'll get into that later. Ricky Dudley is a fast riser. Teams are looking to deal up for him. Simeon Rice will be a safe pick at this point because we know he can get after the quarterback. Eddie George is my most underrated player in the draft right now. If he drops down to 9 for Houston, he's going to be an outside. Terry Glenn also has big league speed. Reagan Upshaw is the best outside pass rusher from a down defensive end position. And Timmy Biakabatuka, great pure running back. If he becomes a better receiver, he could be special. Alex Moulton is the number 1 corner on a lot of teams' boards. Some teams looking to deal up for him. Wayne Clemens I like, but he's kind of a tweener type. McElroy could drop a little bit. Teams are concerned more that you're drafting him on potential than production. And Walt Harris as well, the number 2 cornerback, can also play a free safety spot. Ray Lewis I like. He's the best of a very poor middle linebacking crop. And I think Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is underrated as well. Jason Dunn, one of the best players Roy Kidd ever coached at Eastern Kentucky. Great talent. If his work ethic improves, Jason Dunn could be special.
All right, there's Mel's board, and we'll be checking in with those names as soon as they are picked. So decision time for the Cardinals. About 4 minutes left on the clock. Let's quickly find out what's going down in Big D. Chris Myers is at Dallas. Another team has gone up. You can tell by how many people are around the commissioner if it's a trade card. And if we take that quick look over there,
With the
don't think so.
3rd choice in the first round, the Arizona Cardinals select Simeon Rice, defensive end, Illinois. Well, Baltimore Ravens are now on the clock.
Simeon Rice Rice gives Illinois 2 and 3 in the draft. Hardy to Jacksonville and Rice to Arizona. What you must remember is Vince Tobin, like the man that preceded him as head coach of Arizona, is a defensive coach. Simeon Rice is a pass rusher extraordinaire. And remember they signed Lomas Brown? So they figured, well, let's push the envelope defensively. And as Gary Danielson pointed out, Joe, either side of the ball, they needed some help. And I don't think there's any question about how good Simeon Rice is.
Well, I don't think there's any question at all either, Chris. Simeon Rice certainly is one of the coveted defensive ends in this particular draft. But what I find interesting is Jim Fossil, the offensive coordinator now of the Arizona Cardinals, is not going to have himself an anchor at tackle. How long can Lomas Brown continue to go? And don't forget, you've signed yourself somewhat of an aged, yet still, I think, productive quarterback in Boomer Esiason. So that offense probably will be addressed later on. They had 8 different combinations on the offensive line. They had 5 different tackles play at the right tackle spot. So Jonathan Ogden would have been the safe pick. I don't agree with everybody as far as Phillips goes. I think he would have been a good pick. Defensively, though, you got to look at the head man. It was Vince Tobin. They got Bankston, Swan, Wilson, and Simmons. Clyde Simmons certainly not getting any younger. Probably look at Simeon Rice to be the man to come in there and take over with Brown and England as reserves. So what Vince Tobin wants to do, if we can't outscore you, then we just won't let you score. Boomer, I personally think it's a good pick because of the needs, but the fact is I still think they could have addressed the offensive side and been a little bit better off.
The only question, and if you want to call it a question, Mel and Joe, on Simeon Rice is he's probably not going to be on the field for every play. But then again, he projects size-wise like Chris Dolman, and he certainly has produced from that position exactly what they'll have Rice play.
What you have to really figure out with Simeon Rice, is it going to be like a Trev Alberts in Indianapolis and be a tweener type that has to see the field in situational substitution type patterns? But if you see him coming off the corner, he's 6'5", he's 260 pounds, great strength. He did 26 reps at the combine. He can play off a block, he can get into the backfield and make a play. They're strong on the defensive line, Arizona is. He's going to accentuate that group. Of course, they do have an aging Clyde Simmons that they may have to think about replacing after next year. But I thought late in the year, Simeon Rice tailed off a little bit. He maybe became concerned about protecting his legs, not getting injured since Illinois wasn't going to win, go to the Rose Bowl, win the Big Ten, or go to a major bowl. So I think that was an effect on him tailing off as a senior. To me, though, I think Arizona, Jonathan Ogden is a heck of a football player to still be here at number 4.
The Jonathan Ogden situation has really created a question now. He's fallen a little bit further than most people think. The other thing about Simeon Rice, too, is he plays at 260. He won't play in this league at 270. Look for him to get up, and he has the body to be able to carry that weight, Boom.
Well, Joe, Vince Tobin has made his first draft pick, and as head coach of the Arizona Cardinals, he's with our Gary Danielson right now at Cardinals headquarters. Gary.
All right, thanks, Chris. Vince, your first pick, a little quiet in there. I know you wanted to see all the offers. What happened when you made your pick?
Well, we just felt like Simeon, for all the needs that we had on this football team, would best address them to help make us a better football team, and we're very excited about having it.
Lawrence Phillips, the discussion about Lawrence Phillips, he's a fine football player. What type of thinking process did you go through right when you made the pick?
Well, we discussed a lot of people before the draft and during the draft, what we'd do if we had to make the pick at the third spot, and Lawrence was certainly one of them we considered. A lot of other people considered, but we felt like Simeon's the best guy for us.
So your team gave up a lot of rushing yards last year. The Cardinals, Simeon Rice is a pass rusher. Can he stop the run?
Oh, I think he can stop the run. That's one thing I talked to him about when I had him on the phone was I keep hearing that he can't play the run, and I think he can, and he thinks he can, and I think he can be a complete football player for us.
One more thing on Lawrence Phillips. Did his past experiences make him undraftable for the Cardinals?
Oh, I don't think it made him undraftable. Like I say, you make a decision of who you think's best for your football team, and we decided Simeon Rice would be the guy that could best help us.
All right, Coach. Big chair. He made the first decision.
Thank you very much.
All right, let's now go to Chris Fowler. Chris?
Gary, thanks. Arizona, traditionally one of the least predictable teams on draft day. Next up, the new team, the Baltimore Ravens. Joining me now, the former player personnel director for the Cleveland Browns. This is the first NFL draft in history not involving a team from Cleveland. So, Mike, your former team on the clock right now. Is Phillips the pick for them?
I think he's the pick. That's what they've said all along. Art Modell said he would pick Lawrence Phillips if he was there. They need a back that can make big plays, especially if they go to a one-back offense, which they're talking about doing. So I think it's the perfect
and you'll see in a moment when they're on their helmet phone. They don't have a new logo yet. They just got the name the Ravens from Edgar Allan Poe, I guess. That's where he's buried in Baltimore. So quote the Raven
Livermore now. It's just a black and white phone until the new logos come out. So you'll have to wait till June for that. Just cleaning up for a minute, with Kevin Hardy going second overall and Simeon Rice, his Illinois teammate, going third overall. It's the first time that college teammates have gone to back-to-back since '93 in the top 10, that being John Copeland from Alabama going to Cincinnati, and then Eric Curry with the 6th pick to Tampa Bay. It's only happened 5 times since the draft, the common draft in '67. It's the first time with Hardy and Rice going so early that the 2 Illinois players have gone together in the first round since 1965. One was a defensive back named George Donnelly. He went to San Francisco. The other was a linebacker named Dick Butkus. He went to Chicago. Which one of Rice or Hardy will be Donnelly? Which one will be Butkus? Both Jacksonville and Arizona are hoping that both Hardy and Rice are Dick Butkus. Lawrence Phillips. Is this Baltimore's pick with 6 minutes to go?
Has to be. I think they're trying to make a deal here. There's no question, because I think they can go down a little bit, Chris, but there's absolutely no question in my mind that they have to take Lawrence Phillips based on the rushing attack of the Baltimore Ravens last year. Leroy Horde, 547 yards. Biner, 432. White, Hunter. But look at the production as far as touchdowns go. Just 3 all of last year. I don't think there's any question that Lawrence Phillips can fill their need. I personally don't necessarily agree with all the criticism that Phillips has been getting regarding his character and the issues that have happened off the field. Yes, he has done some things that he's not, I'm sure, proud of and not happy with, and the results have turned out that way. But the thing is this is a young man who is going to be a good football player. I believe he'll be an asset to a community if he's taken and chosen there. I would take Phillips in this spot because, first of all, they need him. Secondly, Ted Marchibroda, remember the Buffalo Bills, their style of offense? That's what Ted's going to do in Baltimore. He needs a running back, no question.
Well, there are 5 minutes left on the clock for the Ravens. Let's go down to Baltimore and Sal Paolantonio and see if he's got his ear pressed up against the door. Sal?
Thanks, Chris. Last Wednesday, Art Modell, the Ravens owner, and that does sound weird to say, Ravens owner Art Modell, had dinner with Lawrence Phillips here in Baltimore for 3 hours. The next day, he had a press briefing, and he announced to the world that they really liked Lawrence Phillips, it was an impressive young man, I think the quote was, and that they were considering taking him. That was a trial balloon that they were floating up there, and nobody took a shot at it. Surprisingly, for a week, no women's groups protested. There was no outcry, no letters to the editor. As a matter of fact, yesterday at the University of Baltimore, there was a symposium on sexual assault on campus, and Lawrence Phillips' name never came up. But just remember one thing. This is a town that's not used to having scandals associated with its pro athletes. Cal Ripken comes to mind. So don't be surprised if Jonathan Ogden is an alternative for this football team. Now let's go to Chris Mortensen in Miami.
Well, Lawrence Phillips was one of 2 running backs that Jimmy Johnson considered trading up for, one being Phillips, one being Tim Biakabatuka. Here's how Johnson investigated Phillips. He hired 3 psychologists to interview Phillips, and he videotaped every one of those sessions. And in the end, he felt that Phillips would be a worthy pick. He just doesn't have the ammunition to move up at this point. Let's go back to New York with Chris Berman.
All right, Mort and Jimmy, you can wave at us. It's okay. We're back here in New York where it's about 3.5 minutes left on Baltimore's pick. Let's go down to Craig James, who certainly had plenty of success before he's been with us as a running back of the National Football League, played on a team that got to the Super Bowl, the New England Patriots. What are your views of Lawrence Phillips, and should Baltimore go right here, Craig?
Well, Chris, I've had a chance to watch him from the sidelines a number of times over the last 2 seasons. Initially, I really didn't have a lot of praise for him. He was a good running back, but he wasn't an excellent running back. It's taken him a little while to get used to getting into the secondary and allowing his legs to avoid tacklers in the secondary. It was like after he came back from the suspension that he was a new guy. He then became a first-round draft choice. His numbers improved. But you got to remember that he did handle himself extremely well following the suspension. He came back amongst a lot of criticism and power coming from the media. He handled it well. He came back and he was a better player. I think this is an area where he should be taken somewhere in the middle of the first round, but not the first or second round pick of the NFL draft. Chris?
I will see what the Ravens feel. The pick is in. And let's go up to the podium and see if this is where Lawrence Phillips will play in the NFL.
With the 4th choice in the first round, the Baltimore Ravens select John Ogden, tackle, UCLA.
The New York Giants are now on the clock. Jonathan Ogden, 6'8", 318, is the Baltimore pick. You're not Lawrence Phillips. And as somebody once said, the plot thickens. The plot is now thickening, although certainly when you're looking at Ogden, even though this is a team with some very good tackles, Ogden projects as how can you say that a man who is 318 pounds looks skinny? You just saw Jonathan Ogden. He can move. He's got athletic ability that you would never believe, Mel, for a player who weighs 318, 320.
I'll tell you, I think Art Modell hit the jackpot with his first pick in Baltimore. I couldn't agree with it any more than they obviously came to the conclusion that they had to pass on Phillips. But Ogden is a superior athlete. To see the ability to get down the field and make a block, to view defenders, great vision on the move. You can see him, just the way he can pull out, which gives you an idea that maybe he could move into a guard spot. Of course, the Ravens are loaded at the tackle spot with Tony Jones and Orlando Brown. Now they have some flexibility. Watch him the way he keeps his massive frame between the defensive end and the quarterback in pass protection. You look at the cornerstone of any great team in the NFL. Look at the Dallas Cowboys with Eric Williams, the kind of difference he's made. Richmond Webb in Miami. We can go on and on. You need a great offensive tackle, a great bookend to make everything easier for your quarterback and your running game. And I think Jonathan Ogden will do exactly that in Baltimore.
He has athletic ability at that position that you rarely see. Richmond Webb might come to mind, maybe a William Rowe down in New Orleans. Ogden, local, right? Going pretty much back home, right? Washington area. Yep. Young man. Now he plays about an hour from home in Baltimore. And it's only the second time that the Browns/Ravens have taken an offensive lineman in the first round in 23 years. Steve Everett, 1993. Safe to say that Everett's hair is longer than Jonathan Ogden's. Let's go down and get the latest from Chris Mortensen in Miami. Mort?
Well, the New York Giants, this is probably their worst nightmare. They were hoping to get one of the four players that have already been taken. You know, they expected maybe Simeon Rice would be there. They would have taken Ogden. Lawrence Phillips just isn't a need pick. They took Tyrone Wheatley last year. They've got Rodney Hampton. So right now, the Giants are probably talking to teams wanting to trade up in there. Who knows? Maybe the Dolphins wouldn't mind doing that. But the Giants clearly talking to teams. Otherwise, you're looking at a guy like Cedric Jones or possibly Terry Glenn here, a wide receiver pick. But clearly the Giants disappointed with what has transpired here. Let's go back to Chris Berman.
All right, Mort, thank you. So we had the Jets pick first. The Giants now are on the clock. And now the Giant fans are the ones who are licking their chops. What do they do? George Young and company, behind closed doors. In 12 minutes, we'll know.
Why the Ravens passed up on Phillips and took Jonathan Ogden was that they really liked him. He was a local boy from St. Albans. And here we have Ted Marchibroda. Let's bring him in right now. Ted, if you can join us for a quick second.
Sure.
Congratulations.
Good, thank you.
Ted Marchibroda, the head coach of the Ravens in his first year here. Ted, give us an explanation of why you picked Jonathan Ogden at that spot as opposed to Lawrence Phillips.
Well, we think we're probably getting the best football player in the draft. We decided yesterday afternoon if this time the scenarios that possibly could come up as to when we would take Phillips over the players, and in this scenario, we decided to take Ogden over Phillips, and it was a unanimous decision.
Tackle was not really a number one need area for your offensive line, but running back was.
Well, what we're going to do, we're going to play Ogden at guard. We're going to start him at left guard, and then we take over after that. But I believe that everything starts up front, and I think we'll probably have one of the finest lines in the National Football League next year.
How much of Phillips' past, the character issue, the assault on his girlfriend back in Nebraska, did that play into the public relations issue that this team faces, or whether or not to take Lawrence Phillips?
Well, we're aware of that, Sal, but we tried to get that out of our mind. In other words, we went with what we felt was the best athlete, the guy that could help us the most.
What will you do with the 26th pick? Can you give us any clues?
Well, it's a little hard to tell there, but we don't know exactly what's going to happen. We'll wait until that comes.
Okay, Ted Marchibroda, the Ravens head coach, with Jonathan Ogden with the fourth pick. Let's go to Chris Berman in New York.
All right, Sal, and it's good to see Teddy. I mean, all he was one play away from the Super Bowl. Here he is with another team. Somebody still has to explain that to me. But he's back in Baltimore, where he had such a great run with the Colts in the mid-'70s with Burt Jones. Jonathan Ogden, 318, and who knows where that's going, Joe,
right,
at guard. I think of the heyday of the Raiders with Gene Upshaw as a pulling guard. And, of course, you play behind one of the best lines in the history of the NFL with Russ Grimm and company pulling out. but 318 pounds pulling out from guard, what can that mean?
I think that what you have to look at here is you have to really analyze what Ted said. He said, we're going to try Jonathan Ogden at guard, and I don't think it's going to work out. I just think he's too big. He's too angular inside. You got Tony Jones at left tackle. They just traded for Blackshear. Everett at center. Herman's there at right guard, and Brown is at right tackle. They're solid, and they're young in the offensive line. Jonathan Ogden gives them an insurance policy, gives them an opportunity to make some changes and shuffle people around. One thing that you can't get enough of in this league is you can't get quality offensive linemen. The pick either way, whether it was Phillips or Ogden, I think was a good move. It's a safe pick, and it's one that's going to last, I think, the Ravens a long, long time. The kid is a quality football player, and as we pointed out, they like the fact that he's almost going home because he did play at St. Albans.
And Tony Jones is getting up in years, had the injury problem, and he's also a good guy to learn from because Tony Jones is an outstanding tackle.
I just believe firmly it's going to be an experiment with him at guard. I don't think he's going to find a home there. I think this kid's going to be a tackle.
All right, let's go quickly, Joe and Mel, to Tom Jackson at Carolina to talk about Jonathan Ogden. And Tommy, I can imagine you at linebacker in those days with the Orange Crush, seeing a pulling guard at 318 pounds like Ogden coming around on a run. Now what?
Well, Chris, I think the thing that I want to interject is how successful this kid is going to be, again, because of his technique. And I'll make the comparison between he and Tony Mandrich, who was the last guy that we quote-unquote heard was going to be this good a lineman. What happens with Tony Mandrich was that Tony Mandrich was a guy who tried to overpower you down the football field. For anybody who's watched some film on Jonathan Ogden, what he does is he's got that big frame, but he's very athletic. He's very quick in a 5-yard area, and when he gets downfield, he has great technique. He likes to cut a guy rather than bowl him over. So I think that all of those things that befell Tony Mandrich and actually put him out of football, I know he's back in now with Coach Infante, will not befall Jonathan Ogden.
All right, Tommy, so Ogden was the pick to Baltimore, and the New York Giants now have about 5.5 minutes on the clock. Mel, I think that they had, whether they wanted these players or not, they thought that either Hardy or Rice at least would be there if they wanted to take defense. And I guess the next defensive player would be Cedric Jones. It might be a fall-off. Do they go defense or do they go offense again?
I think, Chris, when you look at the board right now, and of course the last 9 years they have gone, for an offensive player. But I think Marvin Harrison, the great wide receiver from Syracuse, is there. That's a neat area for the Giants. They have Thomas Lewis, who's kind of an unknown quantity. But you see all the offensive talent that they've taken. Defense just hasn't fallen their way. And of course this year you mentioned Cedric Jones, defensive end from Oklahoma. Dwayne Clemens, the defensive end / outside linebacker from Cal. If I'm the Giants right now, knowing these players are there and they're all mixed together and kind of in a group, I'm moving down. I'm trying to hope that somebody wants Lawrence Phillips, wants to jump ahead of St. Louis, because we all know St. Louis is hoping Phillips is there at 6. Somebody wants to jump ahead of St. Louis. Giants move down, still get a good player, pick up an extra choice. For a team that does have a lot of holes, extra choices would help.
They have, when they picked this early, defensively in the early 80s, to have guys like Lawrence Taylor and Carl Banks. Whether those type players are there right now for the Giants, that's something they're weighing with both Hardy and Rice going. Let's go up to Chris Fowler with Mike Lombardi. And if you're the Giants guys, what do you do?
Well, Chris, some surprises in the first 4 picks, and now the Giants, Mike, a notoriously conservative organization, don't expect to take Phillips. What is the surprising developments in the first 4 picks? What impact does that have on the teams now in the next 6, 7 picks?
Well, I think if the Giants would like to pick a defensive player, then they're going to sit here and possibly trade the pick because the other teams in the back will try to move up. St. Louis is in a perfect position. They're going to be able to get Phillips here at 6 unless somebody trades in front of them. Carolina has a great opportunity to get Tim Biakatuka now because Phillips has slipped. So I think the teams that wanted offensive players are very happy at this point.
You were sitting in the war room, as you did in Cleveland. You don't agree with Mel Kiper very often, but he talked about the Giants trading down. Is that what you would do because maybe a Clemens or a Cedric Jones is not as high on your board as, say, a Simeon Rice was, the guy you maybe thought you were going to get?
Well, I think you got to look at the value. I think that's why they take so much time on the clock. You get trade offers that come in, you window values against the players that you have, and you want to trade to where you can get to.
And as for the other teams, fewer trades. Well, let's go back now to New York and Chris Berman.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. The pick is coming in. Joe, I mean, you think it should be a wide receiver at this point?
I think there's a strong possibility it could be wide receiver. You got to remember, the Jets took Keyshawn, got a big, rousing round of applause. I think that the Giants definitely have a need there. All you have to do is take a look at their depth chart. They're trying to count on Thomas Lewis, trying to count on, they signed Callaway, but I wouldn't exactly call him game breaker. So to me, wide receiver is certainly a viable alternative.
Well, there are guys with speed there, like Harrison from Syracuse, if that's where they go. Let's see.
With the fifth choice in the first round, the New York Giants select Cedric Jones, defensive end, Oklahoma.
That makes sense. That certainly makes sense. Yes, they need to push the envelope on offense, Joe, and Mel, I agree.
Choice obtained from the Washington Redskins.
But in this day and age, Cedric Jones, now we didn't have Mel, I don't think, as a possible number 5 overall selection in the draft. But he is a every play player in the NFL. At 275 pounds, he's somebody that can be on there against the run and the pass for the Giants, and this makes a lot of sense to me.
He is. I mean, he really came on. He was the OU sack leader, career sack leader. Really comes hard off that corner. Legally blind in one eye throughout his career, and then he had that cornea transplant. Now his vision is back in that eye. So he did all this damage when he was legally blind in one eye his entire life. So that has been changed. Now he has that vision, the total vision. I think at this point, we thought maybe New England at 7 would, I think, allow the Giants to now to be forced to take a Cedric Jones. Certainly was the way the board flowed. Lawrence Phillips still there for St. Louis. But, either way, if you went for a Jones, a Clemens, or a Harrison at this stage, obviously the trade offers weren't that enticing to the Giants to move down.
Plus, the Giants are not a team that normally makes a deal. They're a very stand-pat team. You have the number 5 pick there. The first defensive player in the first round since Eric Dorsey in 1986 for the Giants. And now St. Louis is on the clock. We'll get to Joe in a minute. Let's quickly go to Craig James down on the floor. Craig?
Guys, I spent some time with the Oklahoma coaching staff, and they told me that they were going through spring drills, and their defense was really average, really poor. They were very concerned. Then they put Cedric Jones on the defensive line, and he made them become a top 10 defense. They are extremely good with Jones on the field. That's the kind of impact player he is, Chris.
All right, Craig, thank you. So an every down player on defense for the New York Giants. Let's go to Chris Myers in Dallas. Chris?
All right, Chris, the New Orleans Saints were a team that liked Cedric Jones. He was targeted as one of their top players. They want to draft defense at number 11. Yesterday, they had inquired about moving up to the Saints, and they are deciding to stay put. They like the way it's falling so far. But Cedric Jones was a player they wanted because he's the best run stopper, they think, of the pass rushers in this draft. But the Giants end up with Cedric Jones. One Oklahoma assistant did tell us, of course, where Jones played his college football, that, hey, he's a great player. If you want him to play 10 games for you, he'll be great for 10 games. But if you want him to play a 16-game schedule, he's still only going to play 10 games. Physically, he can't handle the long haul of the season. Emotionally, the effort that he could put in as well. We'll keep an eye on what the Saints are doing. They also were contacted by the Chicago Bears. Chicago considering trading up in that spot, possibly to draft a cornerback with the Saints. Let's go back to Chris Berman now in New York.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. The St. Louis Rams are on the board, and that means in year 2 in St. Louis, here's the owner, Georgia Frontieri. She's working the phones. She's hard at work right down here. We'll be back.
These days, people are doing things they never imagined before. People who never imagined a minivan.
New York, this is the owner of the St. Louis Rams, Georgia Frontieri, working the phones here at draft headquarters. I don't know the last time the owner worked the phones, maybe those secret Burt Bell drafts that they had in Philadelphia a long, long time ago. But you know what? They do have 2 first-round picks, if you think about it. That's a lot of money to pay 2 first-round picks. So they save here by sending the owner to work the phone, save that salary of whoever's going to work the table today and tomorrow, and put that into a little pot toward this pick or their pick in the first round of number 13. And why would they be looking at running back? Not only because Lawrence Phillips' ability, but Jerome Bettis, who was a Pro Bowler right out of the gates, Notre Dame, his first 24 games were great. His last 23 games were not, which is why he's a name being bandied about today as Bettis, a possible trade to the Steelers. That could develop today. Also questions, and I'm sure Hank Goldberg will get us up to speed, Troy Drayton, tight end, a former high pick, also being bandied about as perhaps going in a trade today by the Rams. But they have a decision to make. There's 9 minutes to go. And Joe, no running backs yet, but could this be the spot? Not only this spot, right, but could we be talking running backs for the next hour?
I think we can be talking running backs very easily for the next hour. I think 3 of the next 4 picks will probably and very likely could be running backs. Back to Jerome Bettis, he got into Rich Brooks' doghouse a couple years ago, and he's not getting out. The only way he gets out of his doghouse is if he gets out of town. They've been shopping him around, have not really had many takers. It's unfortunate for Jerome, but I think there's an opportunity here for the Rams. Remember also, the Rams just signed Steve Walsh.
Steve Walsh is a very smart, very intelligent quarterback. He's not going to sit back in a pocket and throw the ball down the field a long way. You've got Isaac Bruce, who can do a lot of great things with the football, but you need to take pressure off of Steve Walsh. The way you do that is with a Phillips. I really believe that this is the perfect spot for Lawrence Phillips, and I still believe that this is the kid that's we're going to be talking about a year from now as being a sensation in the National Football League.
Joe, we heard Hank Goldberg in St. Louis say that when the last pick was made by Baltimore and it was Ogden and not Phillips, that he heard a loud roar coming out of the room. Hank, you got your ear to that keyhole now? What's going on inside there with 8 minutes to go?
After the last bellow of noise that came out of there, I don't need an ear to the keyhole. Lawrence Phillips is going to be the guy. That sets them up to trade Jerome Bettis. Bettis has said that he doesn't want to move to fullback, so they're going to get the man that they want. And I think they'll now look towards Ricky Dudley with that 13th pick if they can get him. But and that sets them up to get rid of Troy Drayton as well. So there'll be some dealing after these picks. I'm pretty sure of that. But they'll be ecstatic. Steve Wortmeyer, who's the director of football operations here, said yesterday that if he's there, we're going to take him. And you talk about money. They're taking him number 6. They didn't trade up to number 2. Maybe there'll be a little savings there. Back to you, Chris.
Maybe Georgia won't have to work the phones tomorrow. They'll fly her home, Hank. It's St. Louis, then New England, then Carolina, then Houston. Those are the next picks on the board. Nobody knows Lawrence Phillips better than his college coach, Tom Osborne, at the University of Nebraska. Recently, we spoke with Osborne about his star running back.
He has sincerely examined his problem. I can't tell you that nothing will ever happen. The medical people that diagnosed him said it was primarily a situational thing. It was not something that they would predict necessarily would happen again and again. But he lost somebody in his life that was very important to him. He'd had some other losses earlier in his life that had been pretty devastating to him, and so he reacted very strongly. But it was not necessarily something that was going to be an ongoing pattern. And he absolutely had no evidence of psychosis or any type of mental dysfunction. So he can behave very normally, and so I think that he will do well. But no one can predict human behavior absolutely, and so if something would happen a year from now, I'm just giving the best information that I have right now.
Certainly the eyes have been upon Lawrence Phillips this winter and this early spring, but our college game day eyes have always been upon Lawrence Phillips and Chris Fowler, Mike Gottfried, etc. Guys, your thoughts on Phillips finding a home here with St. Louis?
All right, Chris. Well, Mike, we talked about the off-the-field, the quote-unquote character issue with Phillips. Let's talk about him.
For Nebraska in his career, he's the best player in the draft. Just watch him here in his quickness and his cutting ability. The ball game against Florida, gets the football, and watch his head. His head is on a swivel. He's got a feel in the hole for the defenders. And then he's got the breakaway speed. He's just got a feel that's a running back. It's a natural feel that Lawrence Phillips has. He's going to run a stretch play to the left side. Now look at him protect the football, cut through, protects the ball, the home run ability that he has into the secondary. Every time he has the football, Chris, he has a chance to take it the distance. Question about his running back, his hands, but he makes catches on option plays all the time. Here you see a little swing pass that he takes for a big gain down the field. He has good hands. I don't think that's going to be a problem at all. But he only had 4 receptions in 1999. He's only had 12 in the last 2 years as a running back. But when you caught as many option plays, the underhand pitch, I don't think he...
With the 6th pick in the first round obtained from the Redskins, the St. Louis Rams select Lawrence Phillips, running back, Nebraska. The New England Patriots are next on the clock.
Now, so Georgia Frontieri and the Rams played poker. They stood pat. They knew when to hold him. They decided not to fold him, didn't have to make a move. And they're paying him number 6 money as opposed to number 2 or number 3 money. And that's the guy they wanted all along. So I would got to think that the St. Louis Rams extraordinarily happy. It's worked out. You still wouldn't do this, Mel, if you were the Rams.
No way, Chris. It's too deep a year for running backs. You can get a Eddie George, a Tim Biakabatuka. They could have gone Marvin Harrison here, then running back at 13. To me, there's too many running backs. Any year you need one, you can get one. On the plus side for St. Louis, they do have Zach Wiegert and Toby Wright in St. Louis that can maybe keep tabs on Lawrence Phillips, 2 former Cornhuskers that know Lawrence
Congratulations,
Phillips. So hopefully that'll help. I would not have signed Steve Walsh as a quarterback, so you can argue that why draft Marvin Harrison? He has too much speed. Walsh couldn't find him on deep routes. But I myself, Joe, would not have taken Steve Walsh and brought him into the fold at quarterback either.
Well, I don't agree with either of your points, to be honest with you. I think Lawrence Phillips is a good pick here. I think, as we've said, and most people have conceded, take the problems off the field away. Everybody's called him the best player in the draft. You have to sooner or later let the talent go. This is not a league of angels. There are people that have had problems, but they've gotten over them. I think this is a young man who will put this behind him and be a better football player. When you look at the quarterback need for the Rams, Steve Walsh or Randall Cunningham had to be the obvious choice because there really weren't many people out there. I think what Rich Brooks is looking for, the quarterback position is a position today where you don't lose football games, not necessarily win them. I think Steve Walsh fits in there perfectly. I think they're going to count on their defense to make plays. They're going to count on their offense to control the game. That guarantees you almost 9 wins today.
Joe, this is not the only running back in this draft.
No, but he's considered the best.
Well, he's considered. Are you evaluating him in totality?
Yes.
Okay.
I am. I am. I've evaluated him in totality.
Now, if he would have had a major reconstructive knee surgery, we would have factored that in.
But that's physical.
Okay. Well,
That's
I'm looking
the
at
physical
everything,
aspect
Joe.
of it. I mean, the mental aspect, I believe, is behind him. Everybody else, I think, is trying to say, don't do this because of his character.
Joe, that's a fact.
It is a fact, but it's also something that I think will be behind him.
Well, we'll see. I mean, we can argue this,
You and I, City, we can do that.
We can do that all
about
night.
10 hours.
My attitude is that in 3 years we'll look back and see what's happening. But I really believe with these running backs, let's look and see where Timmy Biakabatuka is, where Eddie George is. Eddie George, I think, is going to be a steal for somebody. Forget this Heisman Trophy rap. I think he's going to be another Marcus Allen.
I don't disagree with you. The simple fact that these 3 young men, Biakabatuka, Eddie George, and Phillips, all are quality backs. They're all going to be successes. I think Phillips was the right pick here.
Well, you know what's good? Let's see. It took to the 6th pick now. Joe, Mel, 2 minutes of rock. I'm writing it down right now. And late in the first period, you both go off. We'll skate at equal strength. We reiterate that Lawrence Phillips will have a press conference in St. Louis. He's in L.A. now, so we don't know whether that will be a late this afternoon, this evening press conference, or whether it will be tomorrow. But whenever it is, we'll have it live for you here on ESPN, and then he will speak with our Hank Goldberg, who, of course, is on site. And very soon we'll find out if that's a today situation or a tomorrow situation. Just getting to the running back for one moment, sometimes you can never tell. For example, in '87, there were 6 running backs selected in the first round. Alonzo Highsmith, Brent Fullwood, DJ Dozier, Paul Palmer, Roger Vick, Terrence Flagler. 6 first-round picks, running back.
Where are they now?
Where are they now? But other times you have the men like Emmitt Smith, Barry Sanders, Marshall Faulk. You do roll the dice in this thing, don't you? We're going to separate Mel and Joe, and we'll be back with New England in a moment.
All of a sudden, we're looking at Phillips and Tim Biakabatuka on the board that Jimmy Johnson got out of his seat, walked over to where Brian Wiedmer, a vice president, is on the phone there talking to a team. Gary Stevens, offensive coordinator, behind him. And then you see here, no deal. If he was talking deal, to get up there to maybe take a Biakabatuka. The problem is New England in the division in the AFC East can't make a deal with them. And I really think the Patriots want a wide receiver like Terry Glenn to match up with Drew Bledsoe because, let's face it, Bledsoe needs some weapons. Let's go to Tom Jackson in Carolina.
Well, Mort, I think you're exactly right there. Bill Parcells had an interest in Cedric Jones, who's no longer on the board because he was the one defensive lineman who would play 3 downs as soon as he came into this league. I think the other being Daryl Gardner. I don't think there's a real interest by Coach Parcells and Gardner because of some questions as far as attitude. So I think the position to look at is wide receiver, and I think there's a couple on the board that are very, very even in terms of talent. One is Terry Glenn and the other being Marvin Harrison. And I know that Coach Parcells will really lean toward the guy who's going to offer him the most in terms of special teams. And I think in that area, certainly the edge goes to Marvin Harrison. Let's go to Chris Fowler.
All right, Tom, the guy the media up in New England call Punxsutawney Bill because he comes out once a year. We'll have to come out in about 7 minutes, Mike Lombardi, and talk about the Patriots pick or a trade. What's going on in the war room right now, do you think?
Well, I think if they're going to go wide receiver, I think potentially they would pick it. They could move down a little bit to New Orleans slot, and then pick a receiver at that point. If they don't pick a receiver and they want to pick a defensive player, then they've got to make a decision here. But I think they could possibly trade down to get a receiver if that's what they want to do.
New Orleans drafting at number 11. Why would they do that? Because there's so many good receivers in the draft, and because the defensive guys they coveted aren't there?
Well, I think New Orleans could come up and get a running back. We know New Orleans wants to try to get a legitimate running back to help their running game out. So I think if New Orleans moves up, it would be to pick Tim Biakatuka here.
Okay, so Punxsutawney Bill on the clock, but maybe talking trade. Let's go back down to Chris Myers in Dallas.
All right, thanks, Chris. Yeah, we wouldn't call it a struggle, but it's not exactly a Boston Tea Party. There still is some discussion going on in the New England Patriot war room. Bill Parcells would still like to go defensive lineman. He just feels more comfortable about that, even though Cedric Jones was the top guy on his board. Although Bobby Greer and the front office and owner Bob Kraft are leaning and pushing towards the big play wide receiver. Terry Glenn is the guy they like out of Ohio State, although Parcells thinks he's a little bit smallish. We'll see which way they decide to go. One of their people remarked that Terry Glenn is no Joey Galloway. So let's see what they do. Let's now go to New York. The pick is on the way.
All right, Chris, thank you very much. The pick is up at the podium. New England. Who's going to help Drew Bledsoe? Here's the spot.
With the 7th pick in the first round, the New England Patriots select Terry Glenn, wide receiver, Ohio State. The Carolina Panthers are next on the clock.
Well, so for the second straight year, an Ohio State wide receiver goes in the top 10, and what a home run pick for Seattle Joey Galloway was for Rick Meyer. Now the quarterback that was drafted right ahead of Meyer a few years ago, Drew Bledsoe, gets another Ohio State player in Terry Glenn. Certainly Bledsoe had major problems last year as he went from a Pro Bowl season to a season of indecision, insecurity really in the pocket, throwing off back feet. But you draft the wide receiver number 1, Sterling Sharp, and I guess Drew Bledsoe has to feel a lot more confident right now. What are your thoughts on Glenn from Ohio State? Even though Sterling only had 1 full year to show what he could do over the course of the season, having played behind Galloway before.
And Chris, I think that is the big thing right there. Is he was like a one-year wonder, and everything on that offense, along with Eddie George and Bobby Horn, clicked. But he's a player. He's a guy. He's a big hitter. He can go downtown. He's got great speed. And the one thing you'll see right here is he plays off the ground a lot. He's not a very big guy. And playing in New England where he's going to get bumped around a lot, and he's going to be asked to go inside a lot. He's got good body control, but he plays awfully high. And he's one of those kind of guys that loves to get out there and get the great speed going, get those legs going. And he's going to come up with the football. He's got pretty good body control here, as you'll see, moving around the defender. But the one thing you have to question is football very important to this guy. I mean, he's got excellent speed. Nobody's going to question that, or his toughness. He's a pretty good blocker for his size. But does he really want to play football? I mean, most of the big hitters you can see here, most of his passes are post routes and go routes. And he's going to have, of course, Ben Coates working the underneath stuff. But I'm not sure this is the pick for that type of offense. Marvin Harrison is the best receiver in the draft, not by far. I think he's better than Keyshawn Johnson technique-wise. But I think the one thing you have to look at here is Terry Glenn's desire, his ability to play off the ground, which he does a lot. Can he keep his feet on the ground? And you're not going to run a lot of post routes and go routes in the NFL because everybody can run in that league. Mel, back to you in New York.
Sterling, I spent a couple days in California last week with Drew Bledsoe, the quarterback of the Patriots, and I'll tell you, when you talk to Drew, man, he wanted wide receiver help. He wanted weapons to come into that Patriot offense and allow him to have the kind of year he's capable of, and I think he's applauding this pick. Rather than going defense, Bobby Greer, who's handled the draft now instead of Bill Parcells, wanted to get him that weapon. He brought in Sean Jefferson, an inconsistent veteran. Of course, they have Vincent Frisbee. They think will be a good number 2 guy to complement Ben Coates, but they needed a speed receiver, and this is the kind of player that Drew Bledsoe, I know, is applauding coming to New England.
Couldn't agree with you more. And all you have to do is take a look at the economics in this thing. Drew Bledsoe got about $42 million. If you've got a quarterback that you pay that much money to, you've got to find people to allow him to throw the football to. That's the bottom line here. You invested a ton of money in a guy who's a thrower. You have to go and help him in any way you can. I think this is an excellent pick for New England.
Well, Drew Bledsoe, let's make no mistake about it. I have my theory on his problems last year, and obviously not the main reason. We've said it on game day, is that I think he was almost embarrassed. Such a good kid. He was almost embarrassed to make that much money. He almost thought he had to live up to it so much. Now you get him a receiver. He's more confident. Do you do Glenn over Harrison, though, in this choice, Joe?
I don't necessarily think so. I look for the bigger guy, the faster guy. I tend to agree with Sterling. I think Keyshawn Johnson and Marvin Harrison probably best two in this draft. But you certainly can't discount Glenn's ability to be able to go after the football. This kid can go get it. If it's out there, he's going to find a way to get it. You got to love that in this particular individual. And New England plays in a division where the ball's in the air a lot, and you have to put points on the board. It's not a black and blue division. It's an air everybody division.
Carolina is next up on the clock, and this draft has fallen perfectly for them. They wanted a running back. They wanted Tim Biakabatuka, and he's fallen. There aren't that many scenarios in which you would fall to 8 without them moving. They haven't had to move. That's going to be Carolina's pick. When we return, we'll see if our rattle in the dark is correct with Tim Biakabatuka. Buckeye wideouts. Galloway and Sanders last year, Glenn this year.
With the 8th choice in the first round, the Carolina Panthers select Tim Biakabatuka, running back, Michigan.
Tim Biakabatuka, one of the 11 draftees or potential draftees here in New York. He's on the phone with the Carolina Brass. And you talk about a guy that came forward in a big game. Well, you can ask the kid that just went ahead of Tim Biakabatuka, Terry Glenn, about Biakabatuka's 300-plus yards in the game that Michigan beat Ohio State to keep him out of the Rose Bowl. He's got everything, Mel, you need in a running back, doesn't he?
He really does. As a pure running back, he's tremendous. He has the size. He's got unbelievable speed. He's been blazing 4.43s in just about any workout. And you see the instincts and the ability that he has, the shiftiness for a big back. And then, once he does break a tackle, I'll tell you, he can turn it on. He's got the jet, and he's got the speed, and he also has that shiftiness. He's not just a north-south straight-line runner. What he has to work on in the NFL, we're seeing all running plays here. What he has to work on in the NFL is catching the football. It was an area when he swung out of the backfield, he dropped some passes that you just have to haul onto and utilize that ability in the broken field. If he's going to become a multi-dimensional back in the NFL, what Carolina has to do is round off his talents, and then they have themselves a potential franchise back, Joe.
So Tim Biakabatuka, you're right. I'm gonna speak for Joe just at this moment.
Take it, Lee.
Biakabatuka is exactly what Carolina wanted. Let's go up to Bristol with Chris Fowler and the coach and Mike Lombardi. And I know you applaud this pick. You know what productivity this young man has.
Well, Tim Biakabatuka is a great story, Chris. And Mike, one of 11 children, money, frankly, a big motivator for him to come out early in this draft. He still has 2 sisters back in Zaire, but he's trying to get to America and help his parents support the other 8 brothers and sisters who are hanging around up in North America. Talk about him as a running back, Mike, versus Tyrone Wheatley, a guy taken out of Michigan last year who, frankly, did not have the great rookie season.
Well, I think this player has the kind of running back skills that we look for. He's a square runner. He hits the hole with great acceleration. He breaks tackles as he runs. He's very good after he gets hit the first time. I think he's hard to make contact with. The erect runners are very easily tackled, and I think Tim Biakabatuka is very difficult to tackle.
He has great football instincts, and, of course, he learned those football instincts in the hotbeds of Zaire and Montreal. This shows you that in this global age, there is NFL talent everywhere. Let's go now to Gary Danielson.
All right, Chris, when you talk about Tim Biakabatuka, the only question marks you have, and obviously he does get in the hole well, he gets out, he's got great speed, is his hands in receiving. He does not catch the ball well. And durability. When you talk to the Michigan coaches before this season started, they questioned the toughness of Tim Biakabatuka. When you watch him play, when he carried the ball a lot, he got nicked, he got hurt a little bit. I think Eddie George is the player. That's the guy I would like to line up. Wouldn't be surprised if the Beck's Big Ten player doesn't go. Oilers are on the clock. It'll be Eddie George next. Let's go back down to Chris Berman. Chris?
All right, Gary, thank you. And certainly Eddie George could go immediately to Houston, who cut Gary Brown last night. Houston actually had to cut a player who's now on the clock. The Oilers are. They had to cut a player to be allowed to draft. They had cap problems and actually had to make that cut. Now they're allowed to draft, and we think it could be Eddie George. But let's go to Craig James on your thoughts on Biakabatuka and his running style.
Well, a couple of years ago, Chris, I went to Michigan, had a chance to spend some time, did a story on Tim, and he really was just learning the game of football. He was using his instincts, and he was running and having a great time. The thing that impresses me the most about him is that he has learned the game of football, and against Big Ten competition was truly outstanding. That, in my mind, is almost a step or two below playing in the National Football League because it is a hard, tough-nosed division of football, and he excelled against the top teams. There's a world of knowledge in front of him that he's got to pick up. He's got to pick up the passing game, the receiving game, the blitz schemes from the NFL. Those will be the challenges for Tim because he hasn't played a lot of football. And in the NFL, in order for him to be a 3-down back and stay in there the entire time, he must learn the passing game. That's going to be his greatest challenge.
Yeah, but if the huddle is bilingual, he knows French and English, and there's no problem. We also know that Bianca Batuka, what a great name for Scrabble. 11 letters in Bianca Batuka, which got me to thinking, which is dangerous. Who in the first round ever had more letters in his first name? And we found 4. Oddly enough, one of the men he'll be running behind, Blake Brockermeyer, 12 letters in his name, 95 to Carolina. Dana Stubblefield, a 12-letter first-rounder. Steve Pizarkowicz and Carl Barzalowskis. Those are the only ones with longer names than Bianca Batuka. We thought you wanted to know.
You work hard to own a $30,000 luxury car.
The 61st NFL draft. We are on pick number 9 with the Houston Oilers. About a little more than 9 minutes for them on the clock. Right now, though, let's go down to the podium and join Commissioner Paul Tagliabue, who has a special announcement.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention, please, for a moment. At this time, I would ask you to focus with us on a tragic event this week that deeply affected all of us in the National Football League and in sports generally. The death of Brooke Beringer, the University of Nebraska quarterback who lost his life this week in an airplane accident. I would ask you to join us in a moment of silence.
The NFL draft, the number 9 selection, the Houston Oilers, the Carolina Panthers. If you're just tuning in, selected Tim Bianca Batuka, who had 300-plus yards in Michigan's huge win over Ohio State that sent Northwestern ultimately to the Rose Bowl. Carolina's hoping that he can have that sort of production, or even half of that, in some of their games this coming year, their second year in the NFL. Let's go down to Panthers headquarters and join our Tom Jackson with an obviously thrilled, I would think, General Manager Bill Polian. Tommy?
Well, Chris, I'm here with the gentleman who pulled the trigger, Bill Polian, and head coach Dom Capers, and I guess sometimes it falls the way you want it to fall.
I wouldn't have predicted it. We thought there was about a 1 in 100 chance Timmy would get to us. He was our guy, and we're just thrilled that he did.
Bill, what was so appealing about Bianca Batuka to you? Why did he rise up that draft board the last 2 months before the draft?
Acceleration in the hole, the ability to make people miss, long-distance speed, and toughness.
Any question about his toughness?
None.
Do you think that this guy, Coach Capers, can be impact right now? Do you put him on the field as soon as he gets here?
There's no question in my mind that Timmy can be an impact player for us. I think he has a combination of the size and the speed, and he set a record for the number of carries this year, so I don't know how you could question his toughness.
And he looks so small, but a little bit bigger than what you think when you see him.
I think he was one of the best combination size, speed guys, and with the ability to make people miss, and he was productive, gaining over 1,800 yards.
Let's go back to Chris Myers in Dallas.
All right, thank you very much, Tom. The Oilers, of course, on the clock, and they have just one running back on their roster, Rodney Thomas, and Jeff Fisher, the head coach, concerned about him catching the ball. Eddie George is the player that the Oilers liked 2 weeks ago. Jeff Fisher worked him out. He ran 3.40s and ran a 4.47, averaging that across the board. However, Houston thinks they can still get Eddie George trade out of the 9 spot to the 12 spot. Follow me on this one. Tampa is trying to get up in that spot. They're offering Houston, or at least discussing, a second-round pick. Tampa would like to get ahead of Cincinnati to draft Willie Anderson, the offensive lineman out of Auburn. The only concern the Oilers have with the deal is what the Saints do in between. Would the Saints take Eddie George and spoil the fun for Jeff Fisher and the Oilers? The Saints are considering Eddie George, also Ricky Dudley, the big tight end, but the priority in New Orleans is defense, so they'll be watching to see if Tampa and Houston pull the trigger on the deal as the Oilers eye Eddie George. Let's go back now to Chris Berman in New York.
All right, Chris, we did think that, and you correctly pointed out, that the number 9 and the 10 hole were key spots here, just as you pointed, because Willie Anderson is the next tackle there. And I think George will be there at number 12 for Houston. Is this the guy for them?
It absolutely is, Chris. But again, you're rolling a little bit of the dice here. Does Jeff Fisher want to pull the trigger at this spot? I personally think he can't play games too much. Ricky Dudley's become a very hot property. People want to get up there. As Chris Myers mentioned, Willie Anderson is another one people want. I think if you've got Eddie George, take him right now unless you get what you want. The Oilers really don't have much depth at running back. Look at Rodney Thomas. 947 yards, yeah, that's good, but 8 fumbles, that's got to be a concern. Marion Butts, probably at the end of his career. Eddie George would be a perfect fit.
That's a one-back offense that they're running down there. They took a great young quarterback in Steve McNair last year who showed terrific promise and has had a wonderful offseason working with Jerry Rome. I think Jerry Rome can take not only a young quarterback, but take a young running back and build a very solid future offensively for that Houston Oilers ball club.
For the Houston Oilers, and an aside, Mel, last year with all the questions about where they were going, and they still don't know, by the way, and the commissioner will talk with them later. It could be the Tennessee Tuxedos in Nashville or Memphis temporarily for a couple of years. It could be the Houston Oilers. That's still up in the air. But this was a team that, unlike Cleveland, which was moving, unlike the Rams under a Chuck Knox was moving, they won games. They played well under Fisher. They've got a lot of fire there. Yep. Do you like George to the Oilers?
Oh, I like George. I think he's a great football player. He can do it all. He's a big kid. He can catch the ball, and he can block. I think in terms of doing everything you want a big back to do, he can get the job done. I think he brings a lot of like that Marcus Allen type all-around skills to the table. You look at Eddie George, I think he'll be a steal at this point. Leland McElroy is dropping a little bit because he wasn't as productive this season as people hoped he would be. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, I think, is an underrated player. People don't like his size or his lack of breakaway speed. All he does is get a lot of yards, very creative between the tackles. Will get you that yardage between the 5 and 10 yard range. But I really like Eddie George. I think when you get down to this 9-12 spot, Joe, I tell you, he can do it all. That's why I liked him better than Phillips at St. Louis.
Well, knowing Jerry Rome as I have, I think one of the great things for Eddie George is you can look at him like possibly a John Riggins was for the Washington Redskins in a one-back system. Carry the ball a lot. He's the guy that we want to control the end of the game with. Eddie George has that ability. His size and his power allows that to happen.
We think he's the man, but the question is, will they roll the dice and make the trade? We may have the first trade card of the afternoon. Let's go to the podium.
With the ninth pick in the first round, the Houston Oilers have concluded a trade with the Oakland Raiders.
Ooh, we know what this is.
Dudley.
The Raiders obtain the Oilers' selection in the first round, which is this pick that's on the board now. And the Oilers obtain the Raiders' first-round pick, which is the 17th choice, the Raiders' second-round pick, which is the 48th choice, and the Raiders' fourth-round pick, which is the 109th choice in this draft. So the Raiders are now on the clock.
Well, the pick is on the clock, and it's not going to be there too long. You don't make a trade and then think about it.
No.
This is going to be the tight end. There's no question about that.
That's what we talked about, Boomer. You know, Ricky Dudley's become a very hot property. A lot of people wanted him. Oakland wanted him worse than anything. You can tell what Oakland gave up to go get him. I think this is a good move. Jeff Fisher's only in his second year down there. He's just building a ball club. When you're a young coach, draft choices become very viable. I still think Eddie George could wind up very easily in a Houston Oilers uniform. Don't rule out any trades after this yet.
Well, Al Davis certainly remembers the glory years of the Raiders when they had some of the best tight ends in the business, like the Ghosts, like Dave Casper, like Raymond Chester, and like in the 80s, Todd Christensen, who caught just a boatload of passes. They have not had those level players at that position for a while. They're hoping that Dudley is that man, so we may shift one Buckeye, Eddie George, temporarily for another Buckeye, Ricky Dudley.
With the choice just obtained, the Oakland Raiders select Ricky Dudley, tight end, Ohio State. The Cincinnati Bengals are now on the clock.
So Ricky Dudley goes to the Oakland Raiders, and as far as tight ends coming out, the highest, I did a little research on this one, the highest that a tight end has ever been, last year Kyle Brady went 9, right in this spot to the Jets. The highest that a tight end has ever gone since the common draft in 1967 was number 7, Junior Miller in 1980 to Atlanta. Ken McAfee, number 7, 1978 to San Francisco. Kellen Winslow went 13th in 79. Russ Francis went 16th in 75 to the New England Patriots. So with Ricky Dudley going this side, this is a high spot for this position. But like I say, with Winslow and Francis, guys coming lower in the draft, he's a unique player and really a game breaker who's like Charles Barkley playing basketball, playing a tight end. We really don't know what he can be like playing 2 or 3 or 4 straight years of football.
I'll tell you, Chris, he really came on as a senior. Of course, he was a basketball player at Ohio State, then developed this year into a tremendous football player at the tight end position. Tremendous agility and quickness for a 6'6" and a quarter, 250-pounder. His inline blocking also improved dramatically as the year progressed. Now, I think when you look at Ricky Dudley catching the football, he brings back memories of Kellen Winslow. Certainly for the Raiders, when you look at what Ray Chester and Todd Christensen did, and Dave Casper in a Raider uniform, corner, that's what he's going to have to produce. The Raiders haven't addressed this position in the last 4 years. The last tight end they drafted was in the 10th round, Andrew Glover. And Glover and, of course, Cash did not get the job done. When you look at Oakland last year, you look at the wide receiver position, Timmy Brown's going to get the job done regardless who the tight end is. But Rocket Ishmael and Jet slumped a little bit. They need a tight end for Hostetler, who likes those short intermediate routes. And I think Dudley is a great pick here. The Raiders were aggressive. They moved up, and I think this is exactly what this football team needs to get over the hump, Joe.
I totally agree with you, Mel. I think that Dudley gives them an alternative receiver. You still have the speed outside to scare people, and you need that, whether it's a vertical passing game or whether you're just going to throw the football down the field. Jeff Hostetler took an unbelievable beating, and the important thing is that this kid is more than a basketball player. He is a true football player. Take a look at these numbers. 469 yards, 14 yards of reception, 6 touchdowns. That's an area where the Raiders really need to get production out of their tight end, down around the goal line. He averaged 13.3 points a game and 7.5 in rebounds. I mean, boom. Imagine when they play a pickup game and when the Raiders' off-season basketball team travels around. They're going to be tough to beat right now.
Supposing they throw a Hail Mary and you're going up for a rebound. I'm one of those. Here's my man.
I like the Raiders' chances.
Here's my man. The Raiders